Hi, I've been playing this naval solitaire game for a little while now. It's from Minden Games, and I was looking on YouTube, I couldn't find anything about it. So I thought I'd do a quick review and tell you about the game and what I like about it. So let's have a quick look at the components. It is a small Ziploc bag. You get a small map, which is what you use for gameplay. You get an excellent reference card, which has got all the main charts that you'll need throughout the game to give you some sense of scale. These are two regular sort of sized six-sided dice. So as you can see, it's a very small footprint. And this is what Minden excel at, really, is making really great games that are physically not very big, physically small, small games that sort of pack a big punch, if you will. And it means that they're very versatile. It means you can take them on holiday or away on a business trip. I think even on their website they claim that you can play these on an airplane table, which I'm sure actually you probably could. So yeah, nice and small. I cut the counters out, so you get them printed on a mounted sheet, but you have to physically cut them out. And I went to the length of sort of inking in the kind of you can't really see on the camera, but the all the counters. They're very they're very functional, very readable counters. The exception really being these two British ships. It's hard to read their writing, but the rest of the components are absolutely excellent. Rulebook, black and white, paper stock, sort of describes the scenario of the game, which is around the destruction of the British force. It involves the Japanese. The British were based in Singapore. The two ships that you're going to be playing with are the Prince of Wales and the battle cruiser Repulse, which were sunk by Japanese bombers on 10th of December. The game goes through a sort of how to set it all up, which honestly takes minutes. And then you go through the different phases of the game, the different sequences of play. And what I'll do is I'll move the rulebook out in a minute and we'll just talk a little bit about those sequences. But there aren't many. There's only 11 in full, and some of the turns you won't be using all full 11 of those. The rules are incredibly well written, and I've never had a problem understanding any single rule in this book. It'd be fair to say I don't think I've struggled with any of the rules in any of the Minden games for that matter, but incredibly well written. It does sometimes look like a lot of body of text, but a lot of that is examples, which illustrate the mechanics really well. There are charts in the rulebook, but they're also duplicated on the player aid as well. And as you can see, there's not many pages of rules, 10 pages, and one of those pages is the designer notes and campaign analysis. Then you've got a page really about the introduction. So not many pages of rules, nearly over half a page of optional rules as well, of which I've used some of these, and they're really good. Overall, incredibly well written book, really well edited, really just takes you through the game step by step. One of the great things about this game is you do not need to read the rulebook before you play. You really can cut the counters out, place them down, and go through, because it'll take you through the setup and takes you through the very first things you'll do. Takes you all the way through a game turn, which is great. I actually enjoy reading wargame rulebooks, and it's a great read. But I do love the fact that you can open the game, cut the counters out, and start playing pretty much straight away. You don't need to have read through the whole rules. Kind of maybe helps if you have done, but you don't need to. So overall, excellent rulebook. So I thought I'd just talk you through the different sequence of play through the different phases. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but just to give you a flavour of how the game plays. There are 11 phases in total. You won't use them all, especially at the beginning of the game. Weather, clear or overcast, and that will have some gameplay impact later on. The second phase is one of the most key ones. It's just the radio phase. Now, at the start of the game, the British observe radio silence. The advantage to radio silence is it's harder for the Japanese to find you, but the flip side of that is the advantage of breaking radio silence is that you may have British fighters to help protect your ships, and you absolutely will need these. Now, from reading the history of this, the British didn't have, they kept that radio silence, and that is could have been a considerable factor in the fact that the ship was sunk. So, as a player, you've got to determine when to break radio silence. So, there's a sort of a key decision-making process every turn as part of that. The ship's movement is very straightforward. You move a number of squares. You can move left, right, up, and down. You can't move diagonally. Dead easy. There is a random events turn where that brings on Japanese ships. So, for example, the transports, which makes a nice, juicy-looking target, believe you me, and it can bring on other Japanese counters as well. It can also move the Japanese subs around, as you see here. I've set this game up for a starting position. Again, it takes seconds. The Japanese ships will move under their AI. So the transport, for example, let's say he comes in on there, can move about, and every turn you're going to move every single Japanese naval counter that's on the map around, that's quite, it's very, 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 very straightforward. The Japanese search phase is next. Now, this is a key phase. This is where the Japanese are going to look. You're going to determine if the Japanese have found your ships. If they have, they will then send torpedoes and planes after you. The reality of play that I have found is the closer you are to this square there, I7, the more chance you are of being found by the Japanese. Also, if you're very near the coast, you've got more chance. And if you've been in contact with another Japanese naval, you've got more chance of being in contact. When you start the game, you'll find the first few turns you probably won't be found by the Japanese. But as you play through the game, and most of the Japanese ships are starting around the top of the map, you're going to work your way up, and then you're going to be spotted by them, and they will send their bombers and torpedoes after you. Speaking of which, for when you do the Japanese bombers, you go through a series of tables that you can see. I'll put them on the camera here, and you're going to determine the number of bombers that find you, so torpedo planes and level planes. If you've got some air cover, they may reduce those. If they don't, you've got anti-aircraft on your ships, they can reduce those. If they get through, which they will be launching their torpedoes at you and dropping their bombs on you. There's obviously a chance that they will miss. If they don't miss, they will damage your ship, and they may even sink it. I played a game yesterday evening, and I think it was turn 3. The Japanese spotted me. A small number of torpedo planes. Some of them got shot down by the anti-aircraft. I didn't have air cover. That was a mistake. And lo and behold, the Japanese planes dropped their torpedoes on me, and the very first one rolled a 66 and sunk. I think it was the Prince of Wales ship immediately. So, and that was quite good fun in a way, because it showed the potential destructiveness and decisiveness of having those Japanese planes attack you in this manner. It is important that you do have some level of air cover. So you have to break radio silence. In breaking radio silence, you will make yourself more prone to being spotted. And that's one of the key fundamental decision-making aspects of this game. So the combat, or being spotted by the Japanese planes and being attacked by them, honestly, it's very straightforward. The one thing I would say, the game does not come with dice. You will need 6-sided dice, and you'll need a few of them, because there can be lots of planes. So, for example, the most torpedo planes there can be is 2d6 times 5. So the average of 2d6 would be a 7. So 7 times 35 torpedo planes you're going to have to roll through the tables to see if they hit you and how much damage they do. You can use these counters that come with the game to represent the number of torpedo bombers. It's slightly abstract. You would use these off the board or write them down in notes. The same with the level planes as well. And I did find on once or twice I was rolling a lot of dice to get through the Japanese bombing phase. simply by the fact there's a lot of torpedo planes and there's a lot of level planes. You don't generally have as many air support yourself, so it's can be quite a dice rolly part of the game. Doesn't bother me in the slightest, but there, there it is. Then you have, should probably just mention the actual surface battles. So if you manage to get into contact with the Japanese, let's say my 2 ships do up here, then we do a surface battle. The key thing here is there's a difference between day and night on the turn track. Some of the turns are daytime turns, some of them are night turns. Basically, in the daytime, you got way more chance of hitting the Japanese boats, but of course, so have they. And you'll see that there's several turns for day. So, for example, December the 9th, turn 2 and 3 are both December the 9th and both in the day. The actual surface combat is very, very straightforward. You're simply rolling on a series, just one table really. I'm just the camera can see that, yes it can. So you've got your surface table. You're rolling to see if you hit, and there's a good chance that you will, especially in the day. So for example, the Prince of Wales, 2d6, anything between a 2 and a 9, you hit. At night, it's 2 and a 5. So the average attack at night would not hit. Very straightforward. And then you roll to see what happens on the defense rolls. So, and again, Prince of Wales, hard to sink, more unlikely to be sunk as a result of surface combat, whereas, believe you me, a lot more chance of being sunk by the torpedoes, by the bombers. And that's, broadly speaking, that's the kind of game in a nutshell, really. You go through those series of phases. There are 11 turns. Going through a turn, especially the beginning of the game, it takes minutes. It just takes minutes. And once you've got to understand how the bomber phase works, again, very, very straightforward, very streamlined design. So, some closing thoughts on the game. What I like about it is that it's a small footprint game, which means it's very versatile. I've taken this, I've been away with work and taken this game with me and a few other Minden Games, and no matter what size table you've got, you'll be able to play this game, right? Which is great. I don't mind the sort of certain sense of the DIY-ness of the game. Everything's printed on card. You just have to cut the counters out. No bother to me whatsoever. It is a solitaire game that doesn't take very long to play. And I've got a lot of solitaire games, and some of them, 2 or 3 hours in the evening. Oh, great, wonderful. This is more like 20 minutes, half an hour. Can be a lot shorter if you get hit by those Japanese torpedoes. So in that respect, it has that really nice feeling of, I've got a little bit of time in the evening or a weekend morning or whatever. I want to play a game, but I don't want something that takes a couple of hours. This takes literally minutes to set it up, and doesn't take very long to play. And that's a wonderful thing. And I think I will always have space in my solitaire game collection for games that don't take very long to play, because we've all got busy lives, family and work and things like that. And so it fits in really well. What I like about the games in terms of the mechanics is I really enjoy that decision-making process every turn around the radio silence. And I should notice, when you turn radio silence off, so you've got air support, but you're going to be more likely to be spotted. That's the state. That's how it is for the rest of the game. So knowing when to pull that trigger, as it were, is kind of pivotal part of the decision-making process. I've tried to play the game, been harder for the Japanese to spot me, and lo and behold, when they do, it's really tough. They'll torpedo you. So that's a really interesting mechanic. And because the game doesn't take very long to play, you can play a couple of games in a little bit of time, an evening comfortably, and try a few different tactics. The game is quite challenging for the British to win, I'll be honest with you, mostly because, again, of those Japanese planes. All the mechanics are beautifully written. They're very simple. It's not that the game's too simple, it's that the game's a very straightforward game to play. And by reading through the rule book and going through the process that it takes you through, it really takes you step by step through it, really elegantly and really seamlessly. I never found myself at any point going, hang on a minute, what's this saying? Very clear to me how the game was going to work, and it became very clear to me after a few turns about some of the decisions I was having to make. The game it's very dicey. So what I mean by that is you're going to be rolling quite a lot of dice, and the dice can be your friend or your foe. You get that double six with a Japanese torpedo, it's over, just like that. Conversely, I had some turns where the Japanese had spotted me, but the planes either didn't find me, or my planes countered them, or my anti-aircraft countered them, and that adds to the sort of drama. I think with Minden Games, a lot of their games, they do have a certain element of, not role-playing games by any stretch of the imagination, but the more you imagine yourself, imagine the scenario, the more fulfilling the game will be. And I love that in solitaire games. And it's that kind of solitaire game. I don't think this is a game that's a puzzle for you to solve. There are definitely tactics that will help you. But for me, anyway, one of the great things about this game is that I really felt absorbed by the game, by that turn sequence, by trying to evade the Japanese, trying to find the Japanese, having them move under the AI. So suddenly they're where I thought they were. They're not there anymore. They're somewhere else, and that was great. So yeah, big thumbs up from me. Like I said, I've always got a lot of time for Minden Games. Every game I've got by them, I really enjoy, and games that you can play solitaire in half an hour that don't take up a lot of space, brilliant. More of those, please, Minden. Thank you. And thank you for watching.